Hello everyone. Welcome to the Stephen King Cast, one man's musings on the works of Stephen King. Each week I'll review one entry in the bibliography of Stephen King in the chronological order of publication. And this episode was originally released a while back, and actually I cut out about 15 minutes of the end, and I've turned that into its own episode. This was originally episode in the original sequencing, episode 201. It was entitled Stephen King News and Nosferatu Thoughts and More. So in this episode, you're going to get a lot of news at the time, which includes thoughts on the trailer to It Chapter 2, the Doctor Sleep trailer, news on the Amazon's Dark Tower series, Hulu's Eyes of the Dragon, stand casting, and then there was a portion dedicated towards the first episode of Nosferatu, which I have spun out into its own episode. So I just wanted to give you all a heads up. For the most part, this is just listener email and news. So I hope that you enjoy, and have at it. Because since I've last recorded, we have seen the trailer for It Chapter 2, Doctor Sleep, and I want to discuss Nosferatu. So there's been a lot of stuff that I have been meaning to talk about, and don't think that I haven't tried to get episodes out on these subjects, but like I said, I just haven't been able to. But I'm here now to talk about all of that stuff, and I'm going to start off actually by reading some iTunes reviews. So remember, guys, I can't do this without you, and if you have a few moments on your hands, a review of the Stephen King cast would really, really, really go a long way. Up first, we have, where do we go? We have Minimum Joseph, who wrote the Essential Stephen King podcast, 5 stars. And the Essential Joseph writes, or Minimum Joseph writes, if you are a Stephen King fan, then this is the podcast for you. Our host, Constant Reader, offers wonderful insight, in-depth analysis, and thoughtful criticism of Stephen King's body of work. There are also some really great bonus episodes devoted to the writing of Stephen King's son, Joe Hill. So thank you, Minimum Joseph, and today I will actually be discussing the live action adaptation of one of Joe Hill's works. So look forward to that later in this episode. Then we have Tigger JRH, who writes, new listener, loving it. Again, 5 stars. I just started listening to podcasts recently and found this one and thought I would give it a try. This is very well done, and he brings a lot of insight into books and adaptations. He even gives recommendations from time to time of other books, movies, shows that we might like if we like X. Anyone who loves Stephen King will enjoy this. I certainly hope so, and thank you, Tigger JRH. And then we have, sorry, my computer just froze a little bit. Then we have Mostly Fantasy, who writes new to podcasts, 5 stars. Relatively new to podcasts, I discovered the Stephen King cast while driving back and forth from Illinois to Wisconsin every week. Great content with tie-ins to similar authors, some new to me, as well as King's son Joe Hill, who I started just recently reading as well. Can't say enough good things about the show, all around a pleasure to listen to with great insights. On a side note, I also appreciate the sound quality and enunciation, especially after trying to listen to some casts that were so garbled it hurt to try to listen to. Really professionally done. Keep up the good work. I look forward to more content, and we'll have to check out the Twin Peaks reviews. Tom Most. Tom, thank you so much. And Tom did just mention my other podcast, which is Hanging with Agent Cooper, a Twin Peaks podcast, specifically a podcast about season 3 of Twin Peaks: The Return, which aired in the summer of 2017. So if you're a fan of Twin Peaks, then you can check out that podcast by myself as well. And then we have Laws Yes, writes DHM72. I'm new to your podcast, and I've been binging from the start. I've always been a Stephen King fan and read all of his early classics as a teenager. I'm 46 now. I wanted to start rereading his books again. I enjoy your perspective and reviews. Keep up the good work. So thank you, DHM72. And then we have Don't Let Anything Let You Down. Great and all. I really love to hear more from the Pet Cemetery episode, but still a great podcast. The Pet Cemetery podcast, I assume it's probably the latest episode, which I don't know if I ever go back to the well of Pet Sematary, the movie. The new one, maybe I'll go into a little bit more detail, but I don't really foresee myself going back to that particular movie anyway. So that's that. So what else do we got? I think that there is another review. Yes, from Woo Hoot, which is the real deal, 5 stars. If you want to listen to a podcast that covers all things King with the consideration it deserves, this is it. This podcast has everything the hardcore constant reader could want in a cast done by a person who obviously does it for the love of King. If you love King, this podcast is a must listen. Start on cast number 1 and enjoy it from there. So thanks everybody that wrote in. Like I said, I can't do it without you. And if you have a few minutes on your hands, feel free to leave a review on iTunes. So, okay. Up next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read some listener emails that I have received. And if you want to write in, feel free to do so at stephenkingcast@yahoo.com. Okay, so up first we have Andrew, who writes, "Hi there. I've just finished reading Pet Sematary, and what an incredible book. It's definitely among my top favorites. Anyway, I understand that Stephen King often references his own literary works, and it got me wondering in Pet Sematary if Judd has The Shining. There were numerous occasions when Lewis says that Judd seems to know exactly what he was thinking. For instance, the night before Gage was buried, Judd confronted Lewis about taking the boy up to the Micmac burial ground. I've been a fan of Stephen King for years, and I've just discovered this podcast. Wow, I must say you do an excellent job with each deep dive of these incredible novels, and I look forward to each new podcast. Hey ho, let's go." Andrew, I never thought of that specifically. It's definitely a possibility, and that's a really, really keen insight. I mean, if you look through all of the works of Stephen King, people often have hunches and they have bad feelings about things. So on some level, everyone might have the Shining to some degree, and it's just maybe in the cases of Danny or Doc Holleran, the Shining is just turned up a little bit more. You know, as we see in the Dark Tower novels, there are characters that have what's called the touch, which is the Shining. So yeah, no, I think that's I think you're onto something. I think that it goes by many names, but I think that ability does exist within a lot of the characters of the Stephen King universe. Then Craig writes, "Hello, constant reader. I've been listening to your podcast for a few years now. Once I finish one of King's books, I follow up by listening to your episode about the book. I only have 2 close friends that read as much as I do, so I greatly appreciate the little King online community that you have created. What I want to discuss with you is The Dark Tower. I was going through a very rough patch in my life when I started reading again after college. The first books I picked up were The Stand and It. A buddy of mine suggested that the next read be the Dark Tower series. I don't mean to sound dramatic by saying it changed my life, but it did. I was seriously depressed to the point I started going to therapy. Coincidentally, at this time, I started reading the Dark Tower series. Traveling to Midworld helped me escape from the depression of my own life. I owe King and you a great debt for helping me through a really rough stretch in my life. Sorry that this email is so long, but I felt the need to say thank you for what you do. I always have at least one Dark Tower book on my nightstand, no matter what else I'm reading at the time. I can't explain it, but diving back into Midworld always relieves my anxiety and stress. It holds a very special place in my heart. Roland's quartet feels like my close friends that are just waiting for me to jump back into their adventures. I'm aware that the Amazon series you're not very excited for. I totally understand your reservations because of the order they're doing the books. I'm just happy to get another adaptation in my lifetime. I love Wizard and Glass, so I hope that they do it right. I think that it works perfectly in book form to wait until the 4th book to explain why Roland is the way that he is. But do you think it would work in a TV series to do 3 seasons, then the 4th be all flashback? I'm just trying to rationalize it in my head why would they do Wizard and Glass first. Anyway, sorry for the long-winded email. Long days and pleasant nights." Craig, a couple things. One, thank you for thanking me, but you don't have to, because you making the decision to help yourself, you should be thanking yourself, and you should be giving yourself all the credit for taking that step. Because I really, really have to give it to anyone that says, you know what, I'm gonna I'm going to, be the best me, and I'm going to take care of, what might be plaguing you. So thank you for acknowledging, some small part that I had, but I do want to stress that it was a really small part, and you did all of the heavy lifting, and congratulations on that. And I think that Stephen King would be very touched at this email, because this is what it's all about for him, right? He says that books are extremely there's a specific quote. Books are a uniquely portable magic. That's what it is. And so that is what the Dark Tower series functioned for you. It was portable magic, and which is very appropriate considering that it is a series that involves magic doors. So to know that you were able to open up those doors and slip inside a place that brought you some measure of comfort, I think that is the whole point of reading, that we are able to slip into worlds that exist in a shared, fictionalized space for our collective conscious. It's really amazing that it truly is a form of magic, that we are able to all share something that did not exist before the magician willed it into being, and then now we're all able to be a part of it. That's really, really cool, and I'm glad to know that the Dark Tower provided some measure of relief for you. With the Amazon series, look, I am still burned by how bad the movie was. I don't agree with the decision to go with Wizard and Glass. We're not even just Wizard and Glass, but the flashback scenes from the gunslinger and the Wizard and Glass narrative. Again, I just think that it's not the right decision, because I feel that what makes Wizard and Glass work as much as it does is it contextualizes who Roland is as we already know him. He has been cemented as the gunslinger. Don't forget, then when we meet Roland, he is not mentioned as Roland for over 100 pages, I believe. He is the gunslinger. He has, consider it an evolution, consider it a devolution, consider it whatever it is. He has ascended or descended into a mythic status, right, where his personality has been sacrificed. Who he is and who he could be as a person has been sacrificed for his role to be the gunslinger on his quest to save the Dark Tower. And the character in Wizard and Glass is Roland. He is not yet that gunslinger. It shows how this particular point in his journey helps shape that and helps really put him on that path. I just think that it's a disservice to tell the story chronologically in that regard. Much in the way that I think that it's like if we had never gotten Star Wars, let's just say the Star Wars saga was originally in book form, and then they decided to adapt it, and the books had come out in the same chronological order as the movies had. So if it began with A New Hope, that was the first book that anyone read, right? And then we got A New Hope, we got The Empire Strikes Back, and then we got Return of the Jedi. And then we got A Phantom Menace, and we got Clone Wars, and we got Revenge of the Sith. Let's just say that happened, except it only happened in book form. And then they decided to make a TV series on it. I would argue that you can make changes for an adaptation. That's fine. But in terms of adapting the narrative, I would argue that it's probably best to start the way that the books started, which was with A New Hope, right? I think that it would be a wrong decision to start at the technical beginning with A Phantom Menace, because that trilogy is helped shaped by our understanding of the original trilogy, much like Wizard and Glass is shaped knowing the tragedy of who Roland is and the fact that once upon a time he was this passionate young man whose capacity for love ultimately broke him. That's a who Roland is in the present right, informs who Roland was in the past for us as readers. And watching this doomed fate occur with him in the flashback scenes, that's what makes the book work as well as it does. And I don't think that get excited. Sure, fine, get excited. I don't think that anybody really wants to see a 16-year-old Roland, though. And to know if you're going to do it chronologically, is this 16-year-old going to be the right character for the job? I think that if this is successful, and they do tell this part of the story, I think the best thing that they can do then is do something that The Crown does, and then age up the character by casting a new actor. I think that would be a bold decision. I think that would be a wise choice. And that is something that I hope. So that also means that I hope that this show is successful enough for that to continue and for that to happen. Now, look, with all that said, with my reservations about the existence of this show, all the set photos that I've seen look pretty dope. All right, it looks like something that you would see out of Midworld. The costuming looks what you would expect for these characters to be wearing. It just looks cool. The cast itself is starting to really shape up in cool ways. Can't remember his name, but he played Bronn on Game of Thrones. I believe he's playing Steven, which is great. We have Michael Rooker joining the cast, and my bet is that he's playing Court. So there's some cool names attached to this that I'm pretty excited for. It kind of legitimizes it in a way that I hadn't expected, and Amazon doesn't want a dud. All right, Amazon doesn't. With how high stakes these streaming media wars are right now, Amazon does not want a dud, and for them to pick up the pieces of this bruised, broken, and abused IP so quickly after the 2017 debacle, I don't know. Maybe they really do believe that they have something there. So I hope so. I really do hope so. I hope that it works out, and I hope that I'm wrong about my reservations, because no one wants a successful Dark Tower series that I can watch every week or binge more than me. So I really hope that it works. I hope that it works. I have my doubts, but I hope that it works. And then Tom writes, "Hello. I've become a recent listener and I love the podcast. I just left a review on iTunes. Thank you so much. Great work. I've been a Stephen King fan since I first stumbled across Night Shift my freshman year in college, and I've been hooked ever since. I've also been a Joe Hill fan, unknowingly that he was Stephen King's son since Lock and Key and the Cape graphic novels and the Horns movie, and have been reading his novels collections based on your reviews and recommendations. I'm a sculptor by trade, and one of the first digital sculpts 3D prints I did was of the Arachnolobster from The Mist, after getting a good screen grab when it gets Ollie in the parking lot. I thought you might enjoy some pics of it, and other works can be seen on my website. So everyone, head over to www.mostlyfantasy.com from Tom, and I read Tom's iTunes review in earlier in this episode. The pics, I can't share them, obviously. This is a podcast. But they look awesome. And this is really cool that we got to... that I got an email from someone that actually was part of the process of one of Stephen King's best adaptations. So that is fantastic. But everyone, head on over to mostlyfantasy.com and support Tom's work. Thank you, Tom. Then Cosmo writes, "Hey, CR, I've begun to go through King's works chronologically and have arrived at different seasons. I spent the day reading Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption and going back in your catalog to check out your analysis. Something occurred to me. Andy Dufresne and Andy Dean could be very likely twinners. They both carve little totems, Andy's rock chess pieces and Eddie's whittling, and are intimately involved with types of portals. They are both on triumphant redemptive paths. It is referred in the novella that Dufresne gave up drinking due to something of a problem with alcohol, whereas Eddie kicks heroin in the second Dark Tower novel. A couple of portal hoppers a la King. That would make for an interesting encounter of the minds if Eddie and Andy were to find each other on some level of the tower. Any thoughts on this? Cosmo. P.S. In listening to your analysis for the Shawshank Redemption film, My mom suggests I get too deep in my analyses. I cordially disagree. I love the depth and insight you bring to the works of not only King, but to the work of Joe Hill, Jonathan Mayberry, and all the Twin Peaks stuff. I dig your format big. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Cosmo. Thank you. Yeah, that's I never would have thought about Andy and Eddie ever interacting. That's a really cool idea, though. It's really neat. And I love the idea of thinking about King characters bouncing off of one another. So it's awesome, great. And Cheryl writes, "Hi there. This may be lengthy, but I apologize up front." No worries, Cheryl. Bring it on. Well, I'm pretty new to listening to podcasts. Period. My son likes them, though, so I decided one day just to look around on iTunes to see if I could find anything I would remotely like listening to. I typed in Stephen King, and there you were. So I downloaded the first few episodes. I'm kind of anal about listening, reading, watching things in order. So yes, it's 2019, and I now just started listening to your podcast from 2014. Well, I'm hooked. I listen on my way to and from work, so I can listen to about an episode a day, give or take. I've been thinking about writing for some time now, but after today's episode, I knew it had to be today. Okay, so first of all, the book I read of Mr. King's was Eyes of the Dragon. I was 12 years old and going to a DoD school, Department of Defense, in Rota, Spain. My father was stationed there. He did 20 years in the Navy. Like many other English classes the world over, we had to write book reports. The difference here was that we got to read just about anything we wanted. Some kid told me about this book. I checked it out at the school library, and the rest is history. That was in 1988. I, of course, knew who Stephen King was. I just never read anything of his. No, but I had seen several of the movies by then, so I knew who he was. It holds a special place in my heart, but I have to say that my all-time favorite book of his has got to be The Stand. Well, so far at least. So the episode I listened to today was the one on The Running Man, the movie. I was laughing so hard during parts of this podcast. It was fabulous. I love how you said this isn't a good movie. It's a great movie and a terrible movie at the beginning. Thank you. I really enjoyed watching that movie again for the purposes of this podcast. I really enjoyed it. It sums it up. That sums up a lot of 80s movies. You can make a ton of queso with all the cheese from 80s movies, but being a product of the 80s, I don't mind. I remember reading the story after having seen the movie and was like, the only things that are the same between the book and the movie is the names of the two main characters and that Ben is in a game, which infuriated me at the time. I'm over it now. I remember liking the book and I've always liked the movie. I have skipped ahead and have downloaded your newest podcasts just because I want to know what you thought of the Pet Sematary remake and a few of the other new things. It stresses me out a bit, but I'll get over it. I remember I can always go back where I was and keep listening to the older stuff. And yes, I listen to podcasts of books that I haven't read yet. It's okay. By the time I'll read it, I'll forget the spoilers. I'm just enjoying listening to your breakdown of the books and movies. I don't always agree, but I understand where you're coming from. Case in point, Firestarter the movie. I get where you're coming from, I do. However, it's a favorite of mine. I saw it when I was young and I loved it then. I still love it, as bad as it is. But don't we all have our guilty pleasures? Those books, movies, bands that no one admits to liking, so you feel like a fool because you do. Yeah, no, Cheryl, that's totally dead on. Thank you. I just saw Godzilla King of the Monsters last week, and this is a movie that I have been waiting for my entire life. Every trailer, at the very least, brought tears to my eyes. At the most, made me openly weep. I have been a lifelong Godzilla fan, and I am a unapologetic fan of the 2014 Legendary Godzilla, so I was pumped and primed and ready for Godzilla King of the Monsters. I'm a big Michael Dougherty fan. Love Trick or Treat, it's my favorite Halloween movie. Krampus is now a must-watch around Christmas time. So to know that he, a major childhood Godzilla fan himself, was going to be making a Godzilla movie, I was ready to go for the ride. I know that the reviews weren't great for the movie, and yeah, I can, from a cerebral standpoint, there are fundamental flaws within the movie, whether it be just too many human characters, and I don't mind the human characters, but maybe there's like 4 too many. So it just kind of flies through scenes without really dwelling in them for very long. I don't know, the jokes aren't that good. But I didn't care. I didn't care about any of that. I just liked the movie. I was just predisposed to like the movie, and from an emotional standpoint, it worked with me. I could go into much more detail about why it worked and how it felt very authentic to what Godzilla is, what Godzilla movies are. Here's the thing about Toho Godzilla movies. They're not good. I love them. I love them. They were a part of my childhood. Had they not been a part of my childhood, if I didn't have a preference for giant monsters, if I didn't get gleeful when bad special effects and men in suits are fighting each other over little miniaturized cities, then I wouldn't like the movies. And that's the case here. This just felt like a big budget version of what those movies were. I love a lot of the stuff that's in this movie. There's so many crazy things that are occurring that just makes me happy. So I totally get what you're saying about Firestarter the movie. I totally get it. I can relate to that. I just related to that, and I understand. And someone is mad about how they felt that their time was wasted in Godzilla King of the Monsters. I can't disagree with that. I can only say I totally get where you're coming from. But just my experience is I liked it. I unapologetically liked it. Okay. And then on a final note, I am just like most Stephen King fans when someone says, ew, but he's so scary, and I have to make sure that I don't roll my eyes. I then proceed to ask if they like Shawshank and Stand By Me and The Green Mile, which of course everybody does. And then I get to stand up for Mr. King and say, well, that's Stephen King. And then they're shocked. And then I tell them that while he does have rabid dogs and scary clowns and whatnot, often the monster in the book is humanity and what we do to each other. So my final note, great job on your podcasts. I only have one suggestion. If others like me listen in their car, when you reference other books or movies or authors or whatnot, by the time I get to work or home, I can't remember the names or titles. Is there any way you could do some lists of these things that you reference in your podcasts? You and your friends just referenced a bunch of stuff on the Halloween one in 2014. I will have to listen again to get all that. Just a suggestion. Keep up the amazing work. Sorry this was so long, Cheryl. Don't apologize, Cheryl. This was a great email. And it's like, as I'm recording this, it is June of 2019. And Cheryl and some others are listening to, oh my God, podcasts that were recorded in August and September and October of 2014. 5 years. 5 years, guys, have gone by since I started this podcast. I'm going to try and do a 5-year retrospective look on the anniversary of the Stephen King cast, because it's been a wild 5 years. Personally, for me, for our country, for the world, for Stephen King, for the renaissance of Stephen King, it's just been a wild 5 years. And I would love to do a retrospective look. So look forward to that this August. So that's crazy. So no, Cheryl, I've never thought about actually like categorizing or cataloging any of that. I am sorry. I tweet out, information and references and stuff that I like, and every now and then I'll put something on Facebook too. So I guess if you don't follow me on Twitter or Facebook, I don't know if you tweet or if you have Facebook, but I would do that. Okay, guys. So there's some news. There is some news to talk about in regards to all things Stephen King that I definitely want to get to. So. Last month, the month before that, it seems like forever ago at this point, but the trailer dropped for It Chapter 2. Now, for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, or this is, you're still relatively new to the Stephen King cast, and you're just kind of doing it when these episodes come out and haven't been going through the back catalog of this particular podcast, if you want my thoughts on 2017's It adaptation, there's a 2-part review waiting for you. I strongly recommend that you check it out. Make a long story short, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed what Andy Muschietti did with Stephen King's which it was the gateway drug for me into the world of Stephen King. It's my first Stephen King book. It's the most potent Stephen King book for me. It's the one that means everything. I think that it's his masterpiece. Well, close to being his masterpiece, if that one scene wasn't in it. But no, I really enjoyed the movie. I've been waiting in anticipation for the trailer to drop for the second one, and boy did it drop. I thought it was such a cool decision to basically just give us the entire Mrs. Kirsch scene. I mean, not the entire, but by really taking this iconic scene from the book and just showing us this chunk of it and having us sit there for this chunk of it and not immediately say that it's It Chapter 2 and, just letting it play out and letting the dread build. It's a bold, confident decision, and it just breaks the monotony of trailers, right? Because trailers have that feeling of a trailer, and this feels different by just letting the scene be the scene, and it's just done so well. And one thing that I love is just when Mrs. Kirsch just smiles and is staring at Bev and not saying or doing anything, just staring at her, and it's uncomfortable, and it goes on for like 4 beats too long, and then she snaps out of it right when it might kind of border into like satire timing, but and just like the out of frame, like kind of dancing in the background, how Pennywise just having a grand old time, just being able to mess with Bev. That whole scene, it just shows me that he got it. Andy nailed it again. And then the quick cuts that we get to the losers as adults, they look exactly like I had hoped they'd look. I am totally, I cannot wait to see Bill Hader in action here. As you know, listening to not just my review of the movie, but if you listen to my 4-part review, was it 4 parts? I don't remember at this point. Let's just say it's a 4-part review of the book. Okay, if you want like all of my thoughts on it, there are 4-hour-plus long episodes for you to dive into that I strongly recommend that you check out. I believe that Richie is an incredibly important character in the works of Stephen King. He is not just the jokester. He is a leader of the losers. If Bill is taken out of commission, it's Richie that steps into the leadership role. He's a reluctant leader, but a leader nevertheless. And Bill Hader has that in spades. He could be a great Eddie if they kind of age Eddie up a little bit. He could be a great Larry. He can be a great, and he's going to be a great Richie. I have no doubt. So I'm totally into that casting. James McAvoy, fully into it. Jessica Chastain, of course, fully into that. I was really hoping that she was going to be cast as Bev. Then she got cast as Bev. I was over the moon. So I'm very excited for this cast. It looks great. It looks really, really good. And it looks like there's some scenes at a carnival, which is new and it's fresh. And I think that it fits. I know that the Adrian Mellon stuff is in there. I think that is an important piece that was missing from the 1990 ABC TV miniseries. Of course, I understand why it wasn't in there, but I think that thematically it really speaks to the horrors of the town itself without, having the horrors always be the clown. So I know that people had wanted an episode completely devoted to the It Chapter 2 trailer, but I don't really know what else to say other than I think that the trailer looks awesome, and I can't wait for this movie. Once the movie comes out, of course, you're going to get all of my thoughts and then some. But no, I can't wait. I can't wait for that movie, and I really like what they did with the trailer. And then we have some other Stephen King adaptation news. And this is, I'm going to just read this from the LA Times. Stephen King fantasy tale, The Eyes of the Dragon, is headed to Hulu. Yeah, another Stephen King novel is headed to the screen. Hulu is adapting King's fantasy novel The Eyes of the Dragon with Studio Fox 21. The pilot episode, Deadline reports, will be written by Seth Grahame-Smith, author of the novels Pride and Prejudice and Zombies and Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, and producer of films including It and Child's Play. Grahame-Smith will be the showrunner for the planned series. The Eyes of the Dragon was originally published in 1984 by a small press created blah, blah, blah. Okay, Grahame-Smith told Deadline he was excited to be working on the adaptation. The goal for the series is to feel unlike any Stephen King adaptation before, with this rich underlying source material and the only true fantasy book he wrote that has kings and swords and princesses. We will honor the spirit of the book and the legacy. Okay. I don't like Eyes of the Dragon very much. I think that it's very thin. I think that it is boring. I'm not totally into it. And I think that this is going to be riding the coattails of Game of Thrones. So I'm not surprised that it's getting made, but I'm not looking forward to it. It's not my favorite. I think that it's thin. I think it's a very thin novel for Stephen King. I just don't know how, I don't know how the napkin is going to translate, how well that's going to work in its way into it. I guess there's some things that will be cool, whenever you can see Flag, and Flag being at his most traditional wizardy will be kind of neat. But all in all, I personally just don't find Eyes of the Dragon to be one of his most captivating or his best. He wrote it for his kids. He wrote it for Peter Straub's kids. It is not designed intentionally to be one of his most complex. And I think the simplicity of the story will lead to if it's adapted as is, I think a pretty bland story. I think that there is not a lot of there to Eyes of the Dragon that you can rework it in ways which kind of also works against it, because then I think that you lose some of the truth of what the story is by adding so much onto it. So I don't know. The moral of the story here is I'm not overly excited for Eyes of the Dragon, but I will tune in and give more informed thoughts once the adaptation does arrive. Okay, so that is Eyes of the Dragon. But let's talk about something that I am interested in, and that is the Dr. Sleep trailer. So a couple weeks ago, the trailer dropped for Warner Brothers' adaptation of Stephen King's sequel to his famous novel and the even more famous movie version of the novel, The Shining. So Dr. Sleep, before I get any farther into my thoughts on the trailer, Dr. Sleep is a very, I don't even want to say divisive, because there doesn't seem to be a second camp. Most people just don't seem to like Dr. Sleep, and I want to dispel that. I just want to let anyone know that's listening to this for the first time that has not heard my thoughts on Dr. Sleep that I am pretty pro Dr. Sleep in my household. When I first read it, however, I was kind of down on it, and partially that was because Stephen King had hyped it up as one of the scariest things that he had written in some time. I don't think that it's scary. But with that said, I don't think that that's a fault of the novel. Now, when it comes to Dr. Sleep, because it is a sequel to The Shining, that presents its own set of challenges when it comes to intaking that story. Immediately, Stephen King is almost setting himself up for failure because there is instant criticism of the novel that if he leans into The Shining, then we could be facing a Star Wars The Force Awakens scenario, which is basically it's just a rehash of the original thing that we liked so much, right? Or he could go, what he did, which is he did the opposite of what he did with The Shining, and then people dislike it for that. So he's kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, but I, for one, really appreciate his decision making when he crafted this particular story because, and if you have not listened to my review of Dr. Sleep, you probably should. You should read Dr. Sleep. Read Dr. Sleep first, then listen to my review. But the way that I summarize it, Dr. Sleep, is that it zigs where The Shining zags purposefully. So the Shining is a very claustrophobic tale about three characters stuck in one centralized location, all right, indoors. Dr. Sleep, however, takes place with many more characters spread out over the entirety of the United States, so that it's more open in nature. The setting is completely different, and the threats within the story are not localized to one particular location. So that is different. The Shining deals with the implosion of a family unit. Okay, and Dr. Sleep deals with the reformation of a family and the coming together of a family unit. The Shining was about one man's alcoholism. Dr. Sleep is about one man's conquering of addiction. So one is about the destructive nature of addiction, and the other one, and Dr. Sleep, is about the triumph over that addiction. The Shining is about these inhuman, monstrous ghosts, and the villains of Dr. Sleep. They have motivation, they have heartbreak, they have their own wants and desires and their own needs. They are inhuman in their own ways, but they do have characterization, and there are at times they are pitiful. So that is another thing that is zigging where the Shining zagged. And there's many examples of this, and it functions as a shadow to The Shining, and it works in tandem with The Shining, and it's not a retelling of the story that was in The Shining. It truly takes characters and story, and it does its own thing with it. So that is to just preface my thoughts on the trailer for Dr. Sleep, that just, if you have heard something negative about the book Dr. Sleep, or even if you did not like Dr. Sleep when you first read it, please listen to my review. Please read it again for a second time or for the first time, and see if you can come to it from another perspective. Because when I did, I got a lot out of it, because unlike Eyes of the Dragon, there's a lot of there to Dr. Sleep. Okay. So I heard that Dr. Sleep, the trailer, had come out, and immediately the first image is Ewan McGregor sitting in a bedroom by himself, and immediately I was hooked. Okay, it was a definite visual signifier that Mike Flanagan was directing this, because he has a very specific look. He's very precise, he's very deliberate, and he brings a wonderful blend of humanistic reactions and interactions that are both very genuine while being stylistic at the same time. And I really appreciate about that. And that particular quality was on display in this trailer. So after watching Gerald's Game, and especially after watching The Haunting of Hill House, when I heard that he was doing Dr. Sleep, I was all in. And nothing about this trailer has lowered my expectations. If anything, my expectations have raised. I think it's a really, really well done trailer. And if you don't know that it is a sequel to The Shining, when it says Red Rum, that's a really cool way to get you in. No, I'm totally into it. I think that Ewan McGregor, having him as an adult Danny, I wasn't quite sure about that at first when he was first cast, but watching him. Just watching it, and not that Danny is doing much in this trailer, but watching him is, I'm getting really, really excited. In particular, there's a scene when he's talking to Abra, and oh my God, I really, really like the decision, whether it's Mike Flanagan's decision as a director of an actor, or if it's something that Ewan McGregor brought. But when, she says something like this power, like, is it magic? And he says, I don't know about magic. I always called it The Shining. The way he says it, there's a lot of emotions going on with him in that moment. Like, he kind of leans in for a second. He leans into her to say it. There's almost a conspiratorial nature to it, but not in a very dangerous way. It's like he's sharing a secret. Like, he finally gets to share a secret. It's not a majorly dramatic line reading, but it's a very truthful line reading. I was really into it, and I can't tell you why, but that is my biggest takeaway. Was hearing him say, like, I was called The Shining. Like, he's excited to talk to another human being about this ability, and he doesn't have that chance to do so with anyone else since Dick Hallorann. And even now we're operating within the rules of the Kubrick version, which is something else that I got to talk about. So I should have known when Warner Brothers greenlit a sequel to The Shining that, of course, they were going to play up the iconography and of Kubrick's The Shining. I don't know why I didn't realize that they were going to do that. Maybe I thought it was going to be sort of off limits or too reverential. But in this world that we live in of nostalgia and remakes, and yeah, of course they're going to play that up. And the fact that it's center stage in the trailer, that it was actually kind of like I needed to hit myself. Like, how could I not have realized that? And with that said, I think that that's an incredible choice. That yes, he should be leaning into that, because the Shining is one of the greatest movies made of all time. And I know that there are some people listening to this because it is a Stephen King podcast, and they're gonna have Stephen King's side on this, that Stephen King famously does not like Kubrick's version, which is even more incredible that this movie is being made using the iconography from the Kubrick version. And I know that there are fans out there that just ride with Stephen King, and they don't agree with my interpretation and many people's interpretation that Kubrick's version is the better. But it also allows those of us who have read Dr. Sleep, we're in a unique position because we're not quite sure what's going to happen with this movie, because at the end of The Shining, the Overlook is still there. Whereas in The Shining, the novel, the Overlook explodes. And that changes the course of, spoiler alert for Dr. Sleep, but this does allow for the Overlook to be in the movie where it was not allowed to be in the book. So I mean, there's nothing to say that the Overlook couldn't have burned down in the years between the original movie and this movie. That could have happened. So, or it could have been abandoned. I don't know. But the idea of the characters going to the Overlook, I do like that idea, because in my review of Dr. Sleep, I did posit that I wish that there was more of a fantastical element in the conclusion of the novel, that if there was some sort of ghostly version of the Overlook that Danny lured the true Knot to, where he actually goes to he does go to the location of the horrors of his childhood, but if it was still standing and he had to enter it and use it to his advantage, I think that would have been very, very powerful, and we have that opportunity here. To conquer the ghosts and monsters of his adulthood, he is going to go back into his past, and and come truly face to face with the monsters of his childhood. So I think that there is a lot of potential with that, and I'm very, very excited about a Mike Flanagan directed Doctor Sleep movie that melds the best elements of both the book Doctor Sleep with the Kubrick version of the adaptation. So I'm pumped. I am pumped for Doctor Sleep, and just hearing the music was great. Seeing the rug and knowing that Michael Flanagan recreated a lot of these famous scenes. In the trailer, there's the shot of the blood coming out of the elevators, and that is the only footage from the original Shining. Everything else was created by Mike Flanagan. The dude knows what he's doing. Yeah, he is a master behind the camera, and I'm glad that he has this opportunity to really display his talents on the big screen with big IP. This has the potential to get a lot of butts in the seats, because a sequel to The Shining, that's going to be a big draw, and especially seeing as how they're really selling the Overlook, the rug, the twins, the tricycle, the bathtub, the blood out of the elevator, the Jack Torrance famous movie poster where he's looking through the crack in the bathroom door, and just to have Danny look through that himself. And I'm sure it's like a ghostly like vision version, and not actually looking at I don't think that takes place in the Overlook. I think that that's some sort of astral plane sort of situation. Regardless, I think a lot of people are going to come out to see this, and for nothing else, I'm glad that they get to see Mike Flanagan's displays of talent. All right, and in last but not least, movie news, we have more information on the CBS All Access Josh Boone adaptation of The Stand. So the last week we started to get some news about the casting and what that might look like. So here is what has been reported thus far. Stu Redman, it looks like it's going to be James Marsden. And then we have possibly Greg Kinnear playing Glenn Bateman, Odessa Young playing Franny Goldsmith, Henry Zaga as Nick Andros, Amber Heard as Nadine Cross, and Whoopi Goldberg as Mother Abigail. So that is the speculation at the moment. And I have mixed feelings about some of this. I think James Marsden is really good. I think Stu needs to be likable, first and foremost. He's the guy that everyone feels comfortable being around. He's not the most outgoing person, but his presence provides comfort to others. I think that James Marsden is able to do that. He's an incredibly likable presence on the screen. He's not my first choice, but I don't have complaints with that choice at all. Amber Heard, okay, fine. I think that she'll do a good job. Again, not my first choice, but I'm not going to complain. I don't know who Odessa Young is. I've never seen her in anything, so I can't make any judgments. Greg Kinnear is not what I would have expected, but for anyone listening, I don't know if you guys listened to my 3-part review of the Jonathan Mayberry Pine Deep trilogy books, but I'm a huge Greg Kinnear fan. Huge Greg Kinnear, and the reason I bring it up is because the main character in those books was modeled after Greg Kinnear, and I'm a big fan of Greg Kinnear going back to Talk Soup days, and I think that he has an intelligence, he has a wryness about him, he has a warmth, a sense of humor, and I think that he's at this point in his career where he's transitioning into that sort of elder statesman type of role. I think that he'll do well in it. I think he's probably a little young for the Glenn Bateman role, but then again, I've also saw some fan sites, casting it in younger actors, why can't I think of Steve Carell? Like someone posited Steve Carell as being a good Glenn Bateman, and I can see that. So again, I don't think he needs to be a retired associate professor of sociology. He could just be a professor of sociology who hasn't retired, but had to not work anymore because the world ended, right? So as long as you have someone that is wise, someone that does understand sociology, then I think that you have that character. So I'm excited about that. I think that we all have Ray Wise. Was it Ray? I don't think I'm right. I'm not right about that. Ray Winston? Ray is going to bother me. My favorite Martian. The actor who played my favorite Martian. He played Glenn in the original ABC TV miniseries, and of course he was older at that point, and I think that did help the image of Glenn. Great casting, by the way. And so I think that is the idea of the age that we have. Regardless, I do think that Greg Kinnear will do a good job. I don't know who Henry Zaga is, and Whoopi Goldberg. I'm not into that casting. That kind of seems very I don't want to say gimmicky, but I don't know. I mean, maybe it's good for Whoopi, because I mean, what was the last movie that Whoopi Goldberg was in? You know, she hasn't really seemed to flex her acting muscles in quite some time. So maybe this is the kind of role that she needs to sink her teeth into to remind all of us that, you know, before she was, you know, a host on The View, you know, she was someone that, you know, was a draw at the box office. She was a big part of the '90s, and you know, actually, now that I say it, it would be good to see her in that again. Young, so they're definitely going to have to age her up. And I'm not truly excited about the prospect of Whoopi playing super old. That I for whatever reason, I'm just thinking that that's going to come off as cartoonish. Maybe it won't. Maybe she'll just knock it out of the ballpark. But that's the casting as it is right now. Obviously, missing from this cast list is Flagg. Who are they going to get to play Randall Flagg is going to be the big question here. And there are other characters, obviously, that need to get cast. Harold, Lloyd, Tom Cullen. And that's going to be really interesting, how they're going to portray the Tom Cullen character. So Larry is huge. It's a huge one to cast. So there are many characters that still need to be cast here. So stay tuned to the Stephen King cast to find out when we have casting for this Stephen King adaptation. But I'm excited about it, and I will probably get CBS All Access. Okay. All right, everyone. So may you have long days and pleasant nights, and I'll see you here next time where MOON spells Stephen King cast.